Welcome to Old Hollywood, a world built on glamour, mystery, and very carefully managed illusions. From the 1930s to the 1960s, studios like MGM, Warner Brothers, and Paramount didn't just make movies, they ran empires. And at the center of those empires were actors locked into what many would later call slave contracts. Agreements that decided not only which films they made, but how they looked, who they dated, when they slept, and sometimes even whether they were allowed to have children. Tonight, we're not talking about the red carpets or the Oscars. We're talking about the fine print. We're going to step into the lives of 10 legendary stars and see how the contracts that made them famous also took away their freedom. 1. Judy Garland. We remember her as the little girl following the yellow brick road, but behind that innocent face was a child trapped in a system that did not understand the word enough. At just 13, she signed with MGM, and from that moment, her life stopped belonging to her and started belonging to the studio. They told her she wasn't pretty enough, not thin enough, not marketable enough. So they put her on pills to wake her up, pills to make her sleep, pills to keep her going when her body was already begging to stop. Long days, endless nights, 18 hours on set, 7 days a week, smiling on cue while she was falling apart behind the scenes. When she asked for rest, they threatened suspension. When she pushed back, they reminded her who owned the contract. The world saw Dorothy, full of hope and magic. But Judy was living a nightmare she could not click her heels and escape from. In the so-called golden age of Hollywood, her contract didn't just own her talent, it owned her time, her body, and her childhood. Judy Garland wasn't just a star. She was a warning about what happens when a dream factory forgets that its dreamers are human. 2. Marilyn Monroe. The name alone feels like Hollywood. The smile, the curves, the sparkle in her eyes, she became the ultimate fantasy. But to 20th Century Fox, Marilyn wasn't magic. She was a product. One of the most famous women on the planet, yet paid less than co-stars with half her fame. Locked into a contract that kept her stuck in one box. The dumb blonde. No matter how hard she worked, no matter how much she proved herself, the studio only wanted the sexy, bubbly, slightly silly version of her. She begged for serious roles, characters with depth, scripts that respected her as an actress, and the studio said no. When she dared to refuse another shallow part, they suspended her, as if to say, "We made you, we can unmake you." So Marilyn did something radical for her time. She walked away, created her own production company, tried to seize control of her image and her career. But every move toward freedom came with pressure, headlines, and quiet battles behind closed doors. We remember Marilyn as the dream girl in the glittering dress, singing, "Diamonds are a girl's best friend." But the truth is, she spent her life fighting to be seen, not as a fantasy, but as a real woman. Behind the diamonds and the flashbulbs was someone who wanted something simple and powerful. Control over her own story. 3. Bette Davis didn't just appear on screen, she arrived. Sharp eyes, sharp mind, and a will sharper than any studio contract. Under Warner Brothers, she was expected to smile, say her lines, and be grateful for whatever script landed on her dressing room table. But Bette Davis was not built for obedience. When they tried to shove her into weak, forgettable roles, she said no, and not the polite Hollywood no, but a hard, uncompromising refusal. The studio's answer was suspension, to make an example out of her. So she did the unthinkable. She took her own studio to court in England, arguing that these 7-year contracts were unreasonable, almost like a form of ownership. She lost the legal battle, but she won something bigger: respect, leverage, and better roles. The studio realized they couldn't afford to keep their fiercest actress trapped in mediocre parts. After that clash, the scripts improved, the characters deepened, and Bette Davis became the Bette Davis we now call a legend. In an era where contracts were cages, she didn't just shake the bars, she bent them. Sometimes, even when you lose on paper, you win in history. 4. Rock Hudson, tall, handsome, impossibly charming. The kind of man Hollywood loved to put on a poster. To the world, he was the perfect straight, all-American leading man. To Universal Studios, he was their golden investment, carefully shaped and carefully protected. But behind that carefully crafted image was a secret he was not allowed to live openly. Rock Hudson was gay. And in the 1950s, in Hollywood, That wasn't just a bad look, it was a career death sentence. The studio's solution was simple and ruthless. Control the story. They arranged a marriage, choreographed public appearances, guided every detail of his personal life like it was another movie script. The contracts he signed never explicitly said, "Hide who you are," but the message was loud and clear. If you want to stay a star, you stay silent. So Rock played his roles perfectly, on set and off. But the cost of that performance was his identity. His story is not just about one man. It's about an entire system that decided some truths were too dangerous to exist, even when the cameras weren't rolling. Rita Hayworth. Before the world knew her as Rita Hayworth, she was Margarita Cansino, a dark-haired dancer with strong features and a rich cultural identity. But Columbia Pictures didn't want Margarita. They wanted an illusion, so they changed almost everything. They pushed back her hairline, dyed her hair a bright burning red, reshaped her image until she no longer recognized the girl in the mirror. Out of that transformation came Rita Hayworth, the love goddess, a symbol of desire for an entire generation. On screen she burned, seductive and untouchable, but off screen she often felt like a product in a shop window. She once said, "Men fall in love with Gilda, but they wake up with me." And in that one sentence you can hear the divide between the woman and the myth. Her contract gave the studio power over her look, her roles, her publicity. They built a fantasy the world adored and slowly pushed the real woman into the background. Rita wasn't just acting in her movies, she was performing her own manufactured identity. In old Hollywood, nothing was more valuable to the studios than a beautiful lie, and she knew it better than anyone. 6. Ava Gardner was the kind of beauty that could stop a room cold, and MGM knew it the moment they saw her. Discovered as a teenager, she was pulled into a world of gowns, spotlights, and endless expectations. The studio dressed her, posed her, and polished her until she shined exactly the way they wanted. Her private life became public currency. Her marriages to Mickey Rooney and Frank Sinatra weren't just relationships. They were storylines, used to sell magazines and tickets. Ava herself once said, "I was never allowed to be myself." And that line cut straight to the heart of her story, the Ava Gardner. The world thought they knew, glamorous, controlled, always composed, was often at war with the person inside who just wanted to live without cameras pointed at every mistake. Her contract didn't only schedule her movies, it shaped her image, her reputation, even how and with whom she appeared in public. To the studio, Ava wasn't simply an actress. She was a brand, and brands in their eyes belonged to the people who owned the contracts. 7. Montgomery Clift was not your typical Hollywood leading man. He wasn't just handsome, he was haunting. He brought a raw, vulnerable intensity to his roles that felt almost too real for the glossy studio system. While the studios loved a predictable heartthrob, Monty wanted characters with depth, conflict, and soul. That friction between his integrity and their control was always there. Then came the crash, a devastating car accident that left his face permanently changed and his life divided into before and after. The studio's first instinct was not compassion, but control. Find the right angles, the right lighting, hide the damage, protect the image at all costs. They needed Monty to keep looking like a star, even if he was living in constant pain. He kept working, but the weight of expectation, physical agony, and the pressure to pretend everything was fine pushed him deeper into dependency and despair. His contract said he owed them films, but what did they owe him in return? Montgomery Clift's story is one of the clearest reminders that, in old Hollywood, the image on the screen often mattered more than the human being standing in front of the camera. Base 8. Elizabeth Taylor, violet eyes, diamonds, scandals, and a presence so strong it felt like royalty. But before she became the Elizabeth Taylor we all recognize, she was a little girl signed to MGM, groomed from childhood to be a star. Her life was curated. The roles she took, the events she attended, even how she moved in public all fed into the myth they were building around her. As she grew older, her marriages, affairs, heartbreaks, every intimate moment became headline material. To the studios and the press, her personal life was product, and controversy meant attention, and attention meant money. She once said the studio treated her like a commodity, not a person, and with someone as famous as Elizabeth, That's exactly how it felt. Her image belonged to everyone but her. The contract didn't just map out a career, it defined a persona. Elizabeth Taylor survived Hollywood, became bigger than any one studio. But she never pretended the system was gentle. She knew better than anyone how high the price of that crown really was. 9. Tony Curtis, charming, fast-talking, impossibly good-looking. The guy who could light up a scene just by walking into it. Universal Studios took one look at him and knew they had a heartthrob on their hands. So they put him in light comedies, adventure pictures, movies that showed off his face more than his depth. Audiences loved it, but Tony wanted more. He craved heavier roles, complex characters, something that proved he wasn't just the pretty guy on the poster. The problem was simple: his contract. It kept him tied to the kind of films the studio wanted him to make, not the kind he wanted to grow into. He once described the experience as being in prison with golden bars. The house was nice, the money was good, the fame was real, but the freedom was limited. Over time, he did land roles that showcased his talent, but only after years of doing what the paperwork demanded. Tony Curtis smiled, joked, played the part of the easygoing star, but beneath that shine was someone fighting to be taken seriously, to be seen as an actor, not just a face. 10. Jean Harlow, the original platinum blonde, the woman who lit up the 1930s like a flashbulb. Before Marilyn, before so many who came after, there was Jean. MGM shaped her into the ultimate sex symbol: tight gowns, shimmering hair, a playful, dangerous spark in every frame. The public adored her, but behind that playful image was a woman dealing with heartbreak, illness, and pressure that never seemed to stop. When her husband died under mysterious circumstances, the studio didn't lean into the drama, they shut it down, working in overdrive to protect the brand called Jean Harlow. Bad press was bad business, and business always came first. Even as her health deteriorated, she kept working, pushed by schedules and expectations until her body simply quit. She died at just 26 years old. The studio moved on. The machine kept turning. Her contract, in a way, outlived her. Jean Harlow became a legend frozen in time, forever young, forever radiant. But she never had the chance to grow old, to tell her full story. If old Hollywood had a single symbol, it might be her, dazzling on the surface and devastating underneath.